Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be painting this Orc Barbarian. This is from Artisan Guild's Orc Barbarian range, funnily enough. And this, I think she was Modular Orc D or something. She's one of the modular minis. And one of the reasons I love Artisan Guild is because you can print many different poses and many different weapons. In fact, this one I printed with no weapon, in fact just 2 empty fists. The reason for that is she is going to be used as Yagra, technically a half-orc, even though this model is an orc, in the Yawning Portal bar fight, the opening scene, the Friend in Need, chapter 1 of the Waterdeep Dragon Heist. So I did a few tweaks to her. First of all, I didn't print her on the base that came with her, with Artisan Guild. Instead, I just popped her on a plain old 1-inch base. I also shrunk her down. This is, I reckon, 84%, 85%. Effectively, I took her 30mm base and I shrunk it down until it was 1 inch. And that was the size that I then shrunk down the body and the 2 fists. This one here, I printed the fists separately and then glued them in. Although I did do another test where I actually sliced them together in Cura, and that came out a lot better. So if you're printing a weapon, it might be better to print the weapon separately. For something tiny like a fist, especially since I printed this on an FDM based printer, I would actually recommend that you attach the hands in your 3D software like Cura and then print. So yes, Artisan Guild Mini, she was printed on my Ender 3 version 2 in eSun PLA+, and this one was actually done in the Chep profile. I've been flopping back and forth between the Fat Dragon Mini's profile and the Chep profile. I used Chep for her. She's got a fair amount of detail. I think this is at a 0.12mm layer height, so not as great as I would print a main character, but still more than enough detail. And I'm going to be doing something a bit different with her. I chose her for today's video because she is fairly basic in terms of detail. If I get my brush here as a pointer, there's the skin, which is the main detail, the hair, and then she's got just a little bit of fabric over the breast area and fabric loincloth. Then she's got some arm plates for the boots on the side and the one shoulder and the gauntlets. So I'm going to use her as a very basic example. If you look at my base paints here, I've got some Waaagh flesh for the flesh, some Mechacus standard grey for the dark hair, some Leadbelcher for the metallics, and some Mournfang Brown for the material. And those are going to be my 4 colours for this mini. What I'm going to do with that though is to show off how, with not a lot of detail, you can still give a lot of life to it by doing multiple levels of highlights. So if you look at some of my other videos, I follow the sort of Games Workshop standard of base paint, wash, and 1 highlight. With these, I'm going to take it a step further, and for the main areas, being the skin and the hair, I'm going to go base paint, wash, and 2 highlights. And you'll see the difference that makes, especially for areas where you want to differentiate in a large section, such as the skin and the hair. So, without further ado, let's hop to it and you'll see what I mean. First up, I've got some Waaagh flesh. It's always fun to pronounce that, Waaagh flesh. I'm going to use this just to base paint her entire body, and since her body is majority of the mini, feel free to grab a very large brush if you're painting along with me. I'm using a good old regiment brush just because been in a regiment brush mood lately, but if you wanted, you could even just take a big old monster brush and paint the entire miniature in this color at this point. It really makes no difference because this is the majority of it, and we're going to be doing this color first. So don't worry if you don't color in the lines. Your pre-primary school teacher's not going to call you up and shout at you for not coloring in the lines. You can just go crazy here, have some fun with it, and color the whole thing in. And you'll see what I'm doing here. Similar to other skin tones, I'm laying down a very, very dark foundation. In fact, because she's a half-orc, not even a full orc, I was actually thinking of making her skin tone a bit lighter. But for something as detailed as skin, you want to start off dark and go light. There are always exceptions to that rule, but that's sort of the go-to that you want to try. Start off with a dark color, and then highlight your way up from there. I want to go around with my Waaagh flesh, color in. So, legs, the chest, the arms, and the face. Do all of that now with your Waaagh flesh before we carry on to the next stage. The Waaagh flesh is now applied, and I've actually gone ahead and done just 2 coats of that. That really builds up the color nicely. Make sure you don't get any of the primer underneath showing through there. So that's now a dark, dark shade of green, but that's fine. That's going to work as our base, and we're going to layer up from there. What I've got now is some Mechacus Standard Grey, and we're actually going to do the opposite here. So while the green, we started off dark, and we're going to layer up this grey I'm going to use for her hair. And I want the final product to be dark black hair, but the way I'm going to do that is by starting off grey and then applying multiple coats of a black wash. And I know this looks a bit silly right now, me putting grey over grey. The reason for that is this is Mechacus Standard Grey that I'm putting on with the brush. I used not a Citadel brand, I used a Rust-Oleum brand grey primer. The reason for that is, honestly, it's cheaper, and when I'm doing a lot of minis for D&D and tabletop, I don't mind using the cheaper stuff. So the reason I've got to do this now is if I make a mistake and I put green over that grey, or when I'm painting the straps of her top, I go over the grey, I would have no way of touching up and fixing that shade of grey if I didn't put this Mechacus Standard Grey over it. Now that I've got Mechacus Standard Grey there, if I make any mistakes, I have the colour necessary to fix those mistakes. That's just because the colour in the spray can and the colour that I'm got in the brush here are different shades. So exactly what you'll see there. I got green over the hair. So my only options here are either paint the entire head of hair with Mechacus Standard Grey like I'm doing, or get my spray can and respray her, which I don't want to do, obviously. So there we go, Mechacus Standard Grey over all of the hair. And it's only the hair I'm going to do. I'm not going to do anything else in this colour. I've now got some Leadbelcher on my palette, and I'm going to use this to go all around all these details that I consider to be metal. So her boots, her little side armor over there, as well as this piece of armor on the side, and her bracers, I suppose. And there's lots of ways you could see these. You could be like, well, actually, as a barbarian, those wouldn't be metal, those would be some sort of bone plate armor, or I don't consider things on the hand to be metal, I consider them to be fur armor or leather armor. Those are all extremely valid points. The wonderful thing about mini painting is there's no right and wrong answer. You can paint it however you want. I personally am painting all of this as metal for a few reasons. The first is I want to keep her color palette nice and simple. I want the heroes, the player characters, to be bright and vibrant and have lots of little details. I want my NPCs to be minimalist, I suppose is a good term for it. That's the one reason. The other reason why I'm choosing Leadbelcher for everything is because it's got a nice shine to it. So while she's a simple little mini, the eyes will be drawn to the shiny. I mean, at the end of the day, The whole reason the players are here is because they want the shiny coins. What better way of showing off a good NPC than by making her shiny as well? I think it's a little subconscious way of getting the player characters to notice her. So with that, I'm going to go around, and all of her armor I'm going to make Leadbelcher. The Leadbelcher is now applied, and she's looking nice and shiny. We only have one more base color to do now, and that's the Mournfang Brown. So I've got some on my brush here, and all I'm going to do is pick out all of the cloth bits. So that's this sort of loin cloth she's got going on there, and the strap of material she's got up top there as well. So go around, just keep in mind the back as well. It's got the strap. I'm going to pick that out, just in the same color. I'm not going to alternate between the strap and the main material. The back there, and just don't forget to pick out the inside of this loincloth as well. Those paints are all now dry, and with that, like I said, just a few base coats and she is done. I've now got 3 different washes here. I normally would go 2 overboard, but with her, a few colors are going to go a long way. Firstly, I've got some Biel-tan Green. This I'm going to go over all the skin, obviously being green. Next up, Nuln Oil. I'm going to do 2 things with this. First of all that metal I'm going to use with Nuln Oil rather than Agrax, because I want it to be dark, not dirty. Effectively worn with age, but still kept polished. So Nuln Oil for all the metal, as well as I'm going to use the Nuln Oil for the hair. And I may actually do 2 coats of this depending on how that looks. And then finally, Agrax Earthshade. This is going to be for the cloth areas. So let's get to it. Firstly, I've got that Biel-tan Green on my brush. And a bit too much. Let's get some off my palette here. There's a lot to be said with the color of wash I could use here. I could have gone with Agrax. I know some people who use Agrax for literally everything on all their minis. And for a wild orc, maybe I could definitely see that, darken them down, make them a bit more intimidating. For her, being a half-orc from the city, I would rather use this, just draw out the greens rather than darken it down. You could also make the argument, oops, got a little bit there, that you could use something like Seraphim Sepia, something warm. The reason I'm not doing that is because I want to play to the strengths of the green. I'm seeing her almost like Gamora from Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't want to make her more towards the human side of the half-orc. I want to lean more towards the orc side of the half-orc. So that's my choice for Biel-tan Green. There's also Anthonian Camo Shade, I think it's called, which is almost half Biel-tan Green, half Agrax Earthshade. It's a very dull, dirty green. And to my point, I don't think she's that much like a dirty orc. She's a city orc, she's orc, but she's not roaming the wilderness. She's roaming the pubs. I've now got some Nuln Oil, and I put it straight on the palette this time. Learned my lesson. Just going to go around, putting it on all of the armor pieces. So there, and you can see the difference straight away. That gets into those crevices, makes it nice and dark and shadowy. And this is where I'm going to suffer a little bit because I scaled her down. This model was designed very well and has a lot of great detail, but by scaling it down, I'm also scaling down the depths of the crevices in a way. So don't be put off with, I'd say, like the lack of detail I'm getting with this wash. If you were to print her at proper scale, it's like full on Orc Barbarian, I'm sure you'd get a lot better detail than me. But me, I've scaled her down for the purposes of the story, and I'm sticking to it. So with that done, that's all the armor. And then I'm going to use, as I said, a bunch of Nuln Oil on the hair. And this is to get in between the strands and darken that down. And you can see almost straight away what I'm talking about there. You want that almost natural light on the hair, where you get the shadows between the strands and then the topmost pieces standing out. We'll see how that looks when that dries, but right now that's still looking a bit more grey than black. It's looking good already though. I mean, simple wash made amazing changes, but I reckon once that's dried, I'm going to need a second coat of Nuln Oil over the top of that. We'll have to wait and see. While that Nuln Oil is drying though, I've got a little bit of Agrax Earthshade, and let me just quickly grab this now. Just get all the material areas. If those can dry while the Nuln Oil dries, saves me some time. But yes, go along, get that, and you can see the difference. Look at that versus that side, how much more depth that has. Be careful you don't get too much pooling there, but I must say a wash really elevates a mini from just blocked out colors to having some great depth. All the washes have had time to dry, and I actually did go ahead and do 2 coats of the Nuln Oil, and that actually has made a very, very nice effect there, with the grey becoming an almost black, but darker in the recesses, as washes do, but overall a very nice shade of grey there. It's almost the kind of thing you'll get if you used one of Games Workshop's contrast paints, which I could have done, I've got them right next to me, but this works actually very well. Next up though, we're going to do the skin. If you remember, we did Waaagh flesh, followed by Biel-tan Green, to get this nice dark colour that's actually darker in the recesses. What we're going to do now is we're going to build on top of that. So I've got here some Warboss Green, as well as some Skarsnik Green, and I'm going to use that, starting with the Warboss, to build up the colour everywhere besides the recesses. So I'm going to go along there, along the legs. This is an interesting model, and as I mentioned, because of the scale I printed at, the recesses aren't going to show. Sorry, put it directly center there. Recesses aren't going to show too great, but I'm talking about places such as there behind the knees, as well as, let's see where else. I'm going to do the whole top there except for that little curve. This obviously all the way down. Same on that side, but don't get too close to the other colors there. The knee. Again, I'm going to do the back there. Just leaving, see there's sort of a muscle line there, sort of leaving that gap. So I'm going to go around now with this Warboss Green. Get there. And let's see what else we can do. So the small of her back is a very good example of where we're going to leave a fairly substantial little gap there. Oops, I've gone a little bit onto the clothing, but I'll tidy that up a bit later when I do my edge highlighting there. Let's go to the top there. You'll see how much of a difference that makes already. It really brings out those muscles. So there, along the arm, you'll see there's a little divot we're going to ignore. Onto the hands. The hands are a very good example. We'll go around, we'll just skim the top, as well as draw the lines there, of the fingers. And look how much extra depth that gives that hand straight away. Just a bit more paint on the brush there. Going up here, some very good muscles over there that we can take advantage of. Oops. As well as, what's this, clavicle? What is that? The like rib, top of the ribs, I suppose. But yeah, all of those creases and folds we're going to ignore. And you'll see it very easily here on the face. Definitely want the forehead. Miss the little crinkles of her nose there, miss her eyes. Get the nose. The chin is a good one. And if you can, whoops, get the little cheekbones. And don't forget the ear, just all the way down the jawline there. I think that actually looks rather nice. Tiny bit more water, tiny bit more paint. I'm going to carry on. She's got a faint six-pack, but again, the scale I did this, it's a bit hard to see. So we're just going to sort of use our imagination there to pick out where it would be. And then get the sides. The nice thing with this type of highlighting is it's meant to accentuate what's already there in the mini, but you can also use it to sort of put detail and patterns where there isn't any. I'll actually fill in a bit more. I think that's a bit too in your face. But there we go. Oops. And around the back, just tidy in a bit there. And then here. So that's what I'm talking about. I can accentuate the muscles even if the miniature didn't have any muscles. Almost like what they did for the guys in the movie 300. They just painted on muscles. There we go. Go around, get the hands. Top of the hand. Oops, I am bumping this tripod a lot. And with that, oh, there we go. That's actually looking rather decent. Just make sure I haven't missed any spots. Yeah. And that's it then for the Warboss Green. Now that I'm done with the Warboss Green, I've got the Skarsnik Green on my palette. And for this, I'm going to accentuate things even further. So we've got the dark, we've got the recesses, we've got now these midtones. I'm going to use this for the very, very edge highlights. So if I was looking down like this, where would light hit? Well, it's going to hit a bit on her forehead, a bit on her nose, on her hands quite a bit, on the chest, and a little bit on that leg. So let's accentuate that. So definitely tip of the nose and almost by the eyebrows there, I would say. Tiny bit on the chin. Let's say there on the chest area, just paint a little line. Oops, again, I've gone onto clothing. A little bit. What I like to do with muscles, paint on the brush there, is not actually do the whole muscle, just draw like a little line on it, like that. With the hand, get like the knuckles there. Same there, I want to get knuckles and the thumb. But on the muscles there, I'm just going to like little dash, dash, dash. You don't want to go too overboard. The leg there, just whoosh. There we go. Now look at that. That straight away gives a very nice sunlight effect. Ironic since she'll be in a tavern, but tavern light, let's call it. Oh, the back here, definitely. That's going to be sticking out. And a little bit there. Same on that side. Get the areas where the light would hit. Maybe a little bit on the shoulder blade. And with that, you can see the difference between a mini that we did with one level of highlights and with 2 levels of highlights. With that green done, let's do a similar thing with the hair. And yes, I know this looks annoying with the lids all facing wrong directions, but all of the labels are facing forwards, and I don't know if this annoys anyone else, but this annoys me. The labels are all facing forward, but the lids are facing random directions. Anyway, what we've done so far is we've done the Mechacus Standard Grey, we've done 2 coats of Nuln Oil. A slightly different technique is to actually bring back that original shade before you do the highlights. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to take some Mechacus Standard Grey, just get a bit of my palette, and use that as effectively my first layer of highlights. So just at the top there, let's get a bit, not all the way down, but look at that, already bringing out that color. That highlight there just instantly looks like the light is catching. And I don't want to do all of it. I'm actually going to take my brush and just sort of skim it along. Oops, a bit too much paint on the brush, but it's fine. Just some of the biggest folds of the hair. And we're effectively bringing back that original tone before we added all the shading. I'm going to have to correct myself here. I actually took a look, and this Eshin Grey, this was more of a highlight for a black tone. It actually, if you compare Eshin Grey and Mechacus Standard Grey side by side, Eshin Grey actually looks a bit darker. So there's no use lightening up a color with a darker color. Let's park that and take a look at the Dawnstone. This is much lighter. What we're going to do is just put that center there. Just get right there in the middle of that highlight, the very tips there. Then here as well, I've colored in quite a bit with the Mechacus Standard Grey. I'm just going to take roughly the middle of that and just do a little whoosh, 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 whoosh. Little sound effect there. Bob Ross told me that sound effects help you paint better. And there we go. We've now got some very nice dark tones where the shade is, the medium tones, and the brighter tones. It's actually just, there we go. Hair is looking good, and skin is looking good. With that done, I've now gone back to the fact that we used Mournfang Brown, followed by Agrax. I'm now going to take some Gorthor Brown and just edge highlight this brown here. Just bring this back up. And a very easy place to see is, got these folds here. These, look how much nicer that looks with that little bit of a highlight there. That's also when I'm going to go over the top there, which is going to be good because this is going to hide any mistakes I made with the green earlier. Just edge highlight effectively the edges yes of all the clothing. Get more paint on my brush. So here as well, along that edge, nice and thick there because it's a nice thick little tear, and then a bit thinner there where I messed that green earlier, just along that edge. And look at that, because that's effectively folded over fabric. That looks very nice in that color. Over there I might just do a little line. There we go. And with that, that shows you a very nice distinction of what different levels of highlighting can do. We've got 1 level of highlighting for the cloth and 2 for the skin, because the cloth's not that important. It's a very small detail in comparison to the skin tone. With that done, there's only one thing left to do, and that's to highlight everywhere that we used Leadbelcher. Darken down with Nuln Oil. I'm now going to take some Runefang Steel, and honestly, I'm not a big fan of these metallic layer paints. I can never get them right. Don't know if I'm not shaking them enough or if mine have just gone funny from being transported. But let's see. I've got some on my brush now. And effectively what I want to do is just brighten up some of that metal. So I'm going to try and highlight, but I'm not really noticing it. And I have this problem with a lot of these layer paints. Let's see. Let's actually try and get some shine back there. It's very, very faint. Barely noticing it. You know what? Let me pause. Give this thing even more of a shake, and we'll come back now. Okay, I think I've taught that paint a lesson. Let's give it a shake now. Give it a shake. Give it a try. There we go. That is looking a lot more vibrant, and this will effectively be used to brighten up parts of this metal, because we don't want it to look dull. We want it to look nice and shiny, catching the eye of the party, and maybe even a little bit intimidating. The way I see it, she's gonna have almost military level cleanliness of her armor, making sure that it's always well polished and well looked after. So I'm going to go around, not too focused on the back, more focused on these parts here when the character sees her from the front. So a bit more paint on my brush, nice little small one there, just catch that. And especially this shoulder pad here with this nice big spike. You want to draw attention to that because it's such a high focal point. Here we go. And with that, I've gone ahead and blacked in her base and most of my fingers, and she is tabletop ready. I am hoping to use her as Yagra, one of the first NPCs the party will meet, and hopefully befriend and help. Who knows with these guys. Anyway, thanks again for sticking with me if you've made it this far. I know this is a new channel and I still have lots to learn, so if there's any advice, pop it in the comments down below. Anything you want to see, any tips you might have for improving the quality of my print or the quality of my paints, let me know in the comments, or just say hi. Anyway, thanks for staying by, thanks for watching, and until next time, cheers.